You were signed to Island Records with someone?
Yeah, I've been on Island Records. I've been on Sire Records. I've been on Elektra Records. I've been on Warner Brothers 3 times, I think.
How was Chris Blackwell? Did you find him interesting guy? Or?
He was cool. He basically he came down to see the band because Grace Jones um told him to come down and see us. And he came into the dressing room afterwards and said, "I want to sign you." And we told him to fuck off because we didn't know who he was. And then Grace Jones walked in afterwards, and then we realized that he actually was Chris Blackwell. And
So hysterical.
and then we signed like 5 days later and actually we signed in Bob Marley's apartment up there.
Was
And
that
then
rock with the Rockettes or that? How
yeah,
did
that
that
was
work?
with the Rockettes. With the Rockettes.
And was this before the Stray Cats or kind of
Yeah.
similar
I
vibe?
mean,
Or?
I mean, we the Stray Cats were I think they were called the Hep Cats or the Alley Cats or something like that. And they were like a Long Island band, and at that point we were doing like 700 seaters in New York. So
Right.
so um
But did you find Black? I mean, Blackwell is a music fan. I was just trying to get out, of all the record
he
companies
was,
or
I think,
Geffen.
to tell the truth, because I can say this, I can be critical on retrospect and everything like that. I think he was much more attracted to our energy, and we were basically like, we were much more like the Small Faces or the New York Dolls than we were a rockabilly band,
Okay,
and I think he was excited to that and the potential that we possibly had more than
being the musicality.
yeah, because we were. I
Okay,
mean, I think I was 20, maybe 20. Yeah.
you call it Gothic Blues.
Yeah, well, it came from I was in bands for years. I've done lots of records and everything, and I just like wanted to get back to what I originally was inspired by, which was I'm from the South, so there was a lot of root stuff and just this, like Delta stuff. What I loved about it was the fact that they were talking about current problems, and they were talking about in their own vernacular the way they talked, and they were like talking about things that were specific to them. And um and I thought with the whole, with the way blues was being approached, it was much more of interpreting somebody else's
Right,
viewpoint, or stepping into the genre so strong that
right.
and these guys in the old days, they didn't do that at all, man. They were playing ragtime, they were playing like show songs, they were playing all kind of shit, and they were interpreting it their way and turning it into it. And I thought, well, I'm going to do the same thing, but I didn't grow up on Louis Armstrong. I grew up on Led Zeppelin.
Right.
So
So like
so
that's kind of our base. Right.
but the whole thing about blues, it's more of a state of mind than actually a genre of music, and it's about expressing that particular dark side that you're facing, and that has nothing to do with, I don't even know how to fucking dust a broom.
What kind of music were you said Zepp, right? You mentioned Led
Well,
Zeppelin.
I grew up on, my fam. I mean, until I was probably in my early teens, I listened to country western. I listened to, like, my
Nice,
grandfather
nice.
didn't like anybody with a high voice, so he didn't like Hank Williams or anything like that. So he listened to like Johnny Cash and Marty Robbins
Oh,
and
okay.
Tennessee Ernie Ford and that kind of shit. Yeah, it was also that, and just, when I started playing instruments at first, I was into folk stuff and everything, Woody
Right.
Guthrie and that kind of stuff.
Okay. And you did mention this thing with yeah, some crossover with I think Springsteen recorded a track of yours, and you said, you kind of felt that, or he identified with your high hopes.
High Hopes, when I first wrote High Hopes, I wrote it kind of like a Chain Gang song, you know, um, and like, got high hopes Monday morning, runs a Sunday night. Got high hopes, slow me down. Like a, like,
Call and answer,
yeah,
right?
call and answer basically, and then I did it in 1987 on a solo record on Geffen, and I used a lot of, like, Alex Acuna and Mary Clayton and Dave Hidalgo and all these different people. And then I put a band together called the Javelinas, and he came and saw us a couple times, and
Right.
um and told me that he really liked the song, which was I have like one record by him I really like, which is Nebraska. You know,
Okay.
so
And was that around the same time
no, he
he
released that
was?
earlier. He was actually, the way I met him was we were opening for Chris Isaac, and we came off stage, and my guitar tech always stood in the wings to take my guitar, and I saw a guy standing there, so I just handed the guitar to him and went over and dried off, and then I looked around and it was Bruce Springsteen, holding my guitar. So, but
It's like this. And you said he was a bit disarming and humble and a little bit.
yeah, he was a very cool guy. He was
Right.
you know.
Wow. Nice story. So I think you have a few different versions of this song. I don't want to
Hmm.
beat it to death because you have a lot of great songs. But, I really liked it. The Javelinas one was, I think you have an, acoustic version.
Yeah.
But it was a good kind of rebel feel, bit of a southern
Well,
wild thing
the
going on.
Javelinas came out of, we were out of LA. I was living in LA then, and I took my old bass player from a band called the Rockettes and we got together with the drummer of Cruzados, and he later he played for Social Distortion, and he played for Bob Dylan and a lot of other people. But we basically just wanted to get completely outside of the scene, so we decided no electric instruments and just bring it down to as raw as it could be, and that's kind of what the
Okay.
Javelinas were.
You said you received no royalties from that. Oughtn't you to be pursuing that?
No, well, no, I did the first time he released it on a video with Blood Brothers, where he made it was a documentary. And
Okay.
but later I did receive, but these days it's like it's a nightmare out there for a musician trying to collect royalties.
Right. Okay.
For not just for me, it's
Um,
for everybody.
and do you mean like Spotify and things like that?
Well, yeah, and
Do you
it's
find it very
just,
hard to generate money from?
well, with when Spotify came and everything, the business got kind of turned head over heels, and it redefined the business before the business knew how to be redefined, I think. And so there's a lot of catch up, and there's a lot of areas, I think it's kind of similar to when radio came, when
Mhm.
recorded music came to radio. It was at first it was all live music on the radio, and then when they started to play recorded music on the radio, it was like all the musicians who were working stiffs were going, what's going on, man? Where's my fucking work? They're playing a record instead, and I and actually they went on strike for 2 years, live musicians, in America on radio. They wouldn't play for 2 years because they weren't getting paid for it. And it's kind of similar
When was that?
that was in
Years ago.
I think it was in the 30s.
Okay. And with Spotify, has there not been some kind of adjustment? The labels have said
Well,
you've got to up it.
it's a much more complicated story than that. It's kind of this kind of pyramid kind of structure where in proportionally, the more you play, the more you get paid. But it's, I don't, I've gotten checks for $250,000 to $500,000 for 200 and like 25 quid. So
Right.
it's
I'm
very, and
sad to
also
hear
with
that.
with
Yeah.
royalties. Also in the old days, when Bruce, I had a number, High Hopes was number one in 21 countries, and 20
Wow.
years ago I could have retired on that. And
Wow.
now all it did was keep me out of jail with the tax man. So it's a
Wow.
different world. It's
Okay.
a different world.
You've got something just out. What's that called?
Yeah, it's called White Crow, and it's I'm actually gonna, in the next like 8 months, I'm gonna release 3 records. But this is the first one, and it's no bullshit. I don't overdub. I mean, I don't punch in and fix things. I don't,
Mhm.
everything is like one takes, and I do this very straight way of working. And this record is basically, me sitting 3 times with a song and playing different instruments and just doing it. Um, and I just wanted it to really like have this honest vibe about it, because that's kind of the hardest thing to get these days.
Okay. Is it your spirit animal, Black
I,
Crow?
I actually, I'm not sure exactly where it came from. I mean, I'm part Cherokee Indian, but it didn't come from that at all. um,
Okay.
it just came from,
It
I
sort of
get
fit the
it,
white
it.
crew. I
It
think
just
is
made sense. It just made sense to me, and it could be a lot more with, I'm certainly not a dove, and it's, and also with age, I kind of like, there's this certain kind of inherent, nevermore kind of wisdom that comes with a
okay.
pro.
You're now playing really mostly yourself on a 12 string.
Hmm.
So to me, a lot of those sort of minor open tunings are very sort of Middle
Yeah,
Eastern.
I mean, I love dissonance, and when I say dissonance, I mean dissonance only to Western ears, but I just like that kind of, in a lot of Eastern music, there's this kind of drone notes, these pad notes, that you play against, that that give you this. I like it. It's like the weather. It doesn't like rain and then wind and then snow. It all happens at once, and that's what I like about that kind of
That's
music.
great. I love that. You went to New York pretty early on. You made a band with some, I think, was there someone from the New York Dolls?
I moved to New York in like 75, 76, and when I first got there, my band became kind of the house band at CBGB's, and Hilly Crystal was actually our manager for a while. It was pretty. It was a lot different than it is now. It was kind of like Shanghai, in the before the war. You know,
And it was, I lived in New York in the 80s, end of the 80s, 90s. And it was pretty, it was edgier on the street.
it was there was this inherent danger that you know, despite the fact it scared the shit out of you, that it made you feel alive. And it made things exciting. You know,
Great.
and
So good time, wild times?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was with this band with Hilly Crystal, and then I joined a band called the Rockettes, and Jerry Nolan was the drummer at that time. So, you know, all the Heartbreakers and the Dolls and the Cramps and, you know, Phil Lynott and Sid
Wow,
Sid
great.
Vicious, all those guys were around at that time. So it was a pretty
So
wild time.
tell me about Norway, your current home. How did you end up there? And was that, I suspect a
um,
woman and kids and
yeah,
something was involved.
I was um on tour with the Javelinas. I think we were touring with Crowded House, and then
Right.
we split up in England, and I got offered a solo tour in Norway, so I went and did it. And before then, for about 2.5, 3 years, I hadn't had a permanent residence because I toured about 250 days a year. So I just decided to stay there for a summer, and then I had the first of my 4 kids.
I've got Danish roots too. I went to school they have a great music festival in Aarhus. So we lived
Yeah,
in
I know. I've
Jutland.
played Aarhus before. I've played there a few times. Scandinavian music. I love Scandinavian folk music. I like again, that has that very kind of atonal scale and drone notes, hardanger fiddle and stuff like that. So I like that kind of stuff. But Scandinavia is it's really unique. The same way when you go to France, they have their very unique approach to music. But they have a thing in Scandinavia called a visa song, which is kind of like a poetic, like a love song or a story song or something like that. And they inherently put that in music. And then grammatically, I fix a lot of Norwegian singers singing in English, but they don't have the same kind of pentameter we have. So it's like all of a sudden they have a melody, and the third line has an extra 2 words on it that they've got to. So it fucks with the melodies and makes it really interesting.
There must be something interesting in there. There was something more natural, very progressive, very beautiful family sense, quite
Well, I
open.
think I think any place you go, you can kind of find that. Once I had I'm a consequent papa, and I once I had my kids here, I wasn't going to go anywhere else, but I am a southerner, and I really miss warm weather and the smell of moss and dirt.
Wow. I mean, my one of my greatest ambitions, because I do some writing, I'm an ASCAP writer, but is to go and record a project at Muscle Shoals. Is that something you've
Yeah.
never had an urge to do?
Well, yeah, I have. I last time I was in the States, I went to Nashville to Blackbird Studios, and
Okay.
it's one of the it's like pretty much the biggest studio around in Nashville for like alternative stuff, from like White Stripes to like, all that jack. And they had like George Massenburg had designed this room, and they had all the, the original like Beatles preamps and reverbs and stuff from Abbey Road, and they had shit from Muscle Shoals, and they had shit from Ocean
Wow.
Way, and they had stuff from the record plant, and they just had this enormous collection. And I mean, we went in, this top of the line studio, and I ended up recording through a 1938 RCA valve mic into a German Mikrogeffel preamp, I think. And it's like, so it's, it
What
kind of
was the
gave.
track?
um Actually, it was, I did it with Nico Bolas, the guy who produced a lot of Neil Young stuff and White Stripes, and did all guys like that. But we'd met up, and he
And
wanted
was
to
it
take me
good?
in.
I mean, it's interesting recording through that stuff.
It is, I do this, the stuff I did, that I'm pretty old school. I don't really, I use, digital stuff like a recording machine. I don't get too excited about all the
Okay.
things it can do. So I like to keep it really organic.
And you have your guitar with you? Do you want to keep that for the end? Maybe we'll go out and something.
Yeah, sure. Whatever you want to do. Yeah, we can. What
Okay.
what do you just shoot?
Let's go through this. Wicked State of Mind. That's a pretty. Uh, there was something. What was I going to say about that? You definitely don't hold back when you're exploring certain. It sounds too simple, but dark areas,
what just it,
destructive or dangerous or loose or wild. Is that a technique or it's just your
No, it's
just
it's what
natural?
I grew up on. I grew up on when I was a little kid, and Johnny Cash said, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die.
Right.
Our shit like that, or a man they say is made of mud. If my left one don't kill you, then my right one will. All that
Right.
shit. It's like I just like understood that, like, the only stuff that really touches a nerve. I mean, I do a whole lot of biker gigs, and they're just not going to buy I gave my love a flower,
Right.
and and it's the same for me. I don't want to, like, if you're going to say it another way, that that it's been said 1,000 times before, then maybe I'll listen to my favorite version of that. But if you're going to say it in a way
Right.
that's a little bit more honest, then I might listen.
And when, okay, because I like that one a lot. And also, what you mean to me, is that about someone? That's not like about a parent or a girlfriend or a
No, it's
lover
about
or
me,
anything.
actually. It's actually me looking in the mirror.
Wow.
That blows your mind, huh? It
Yeah,
makes
I'm gonna have
complete
to.
it makes complete sense then. The song
We're
makes.
gonna. I'm gonna have to loop back and listen to that again.
But that's it's you're a shadow on the wall, you're a drunkard in the hall, you're a face I can't recall. It's just about that point where you
Wow.
stop recognizing yourself.
But it does seem like there's two things. There is,
Well,
but
look
there
at the
is also
Stooges.
musicality.
They're a perfect
Right.
example. It's like, who gives a shit whether the song's good? You're just like caught up completely in what they're delivering.
Right.
And it's the same in a conversation. You don't have to be literate and intelligent and philosophical or introspective to say fuck it. And if the right guy with the right look on his face in the right tone of voice says fuck it,
Right.
he said more than War and Peace could ever say.
Do you have any perspectives on the music industry? Because the kind of you have that unique. I feel like I said to you, you're still exploring, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, I
So, but because of that breadth of time, do you think it's going in a good place, or it will come out of it, or
I no, I
what?
think it's not going anywhere specific at all. And whether that's good or bad, who am I to say? But I think that it's kind of like, you know, geographically, the way before the internet and everything like that, people basically grew up and made their meals, that made their music out of what was available to them. And so that one thing that made you explore it a lot farther because it was all you could get, and also it made the other things that came into you much more interesting because they're doing that. And I don't think that really, like, these days you have that advantage because there is such a potpourri and such this constant mix that it's very hard to find your identity, as a musician or as a listener, even in that. And whether you should or not, I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but
You're talking about artistically.
I'm talking about artistically and also as a listener.
Right.
It's people, this is the age of 1,000 fucking categories. There's like there's so many different categories
Right.
in it's that
It's the internet, is what it
and
is.
and really it's like, if I put myself in a category, I would just say that, that I'm trying to hold on to and embrace the idea that someone connects with you in a really honest, no
Right.
bullshit Janis Joplin kind of way, or
Right.
Reverend Gary Davis, or whoever you want to mention, but just the human contact is it's weird because music seems to be losing that more and more in a lot of ways, but it's becoming more and more apparent where you go on YouTube and you watch, some handicapped person, you know,
Right.
do something, and you watch, like, a kitten standing on their head, and what you're looking for is that kind of intimacy and honesty, but people have
Right.
forgotten that's kind of what, 30 years ago, that's what you looked for in music much more than you do now. And now much more it's just a soundtrack to what you're doing, but it's not your focus, and
So
so.
there is this two thing, this stratification or specialization, and then also that odd thing of, people are reacting to the honesty, which is what you're saying.
Exactly. And so that's
So
why that's pretty much my focus when I try to write and when I try to record and
tell me
perform.
about those two projects you did, Damned If I Don't and Damned If I Do. What were they?
Well, that was I what I did is I went into the studio and I did all the vocals and my foot and the guitar on those are all like one takes, and I think I did all the basic songs in about 3 days for the record. And then, well, because I was living and working in the studio in the middle of nowhere in Norway, and a really good friend of mine is this guitar player from a heavy metal band in Norway called TNT, and he just started stepping in and playing, and then, a couple of horn players stopped in, and at the end of it, I originally planned on just making a bare bones, not even reverb, just a straight ahead record, but I ended up with two versions of every song. And so I thought, well, there's Damned If I Do and Damned If I Don't, so here's a band version, and here's me as raw as it can get you know
We're going to wrap this up and try and go out with whatever. Ooh, did we mention your new album? We did,
Yeah,
right?
White Crow, yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
I,
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll go out whatever you want to
okay.
play, if you want to play us out. Okay. So, is there anything when you have these things, people research these, is there anything you ever think, damn, I wish they'd asked me this? Anything you want to tell? Anything you want to sort of get off your chest?
Oh, Jesus Christ, I spent half my life trying to hide shit. Now you're asking me.
Honestly, right.
Yeah, no. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna play. I have the wrong guitar. I have my baritone, and I have an 8-string baritone guitar that I'll but
Okay.
I'm gonna
Whatever you want to
I'm gonna
play, it'd
do
be
I'm gonna do a
lovely. And
song. I'm
thank
gonna
you.
do this
It's been a
song for you.
pleasure.
Because you mentioned it. So lately I've been thinking some things I hate to admit. Lately I've been saying some things best left unsaid. I'm in a wicked state of mind. I'm in a wicked state of mind most all the time. Looks
It's like I've crossed that line.